There's a clause in your retirement village contract that nobody read aloud to you the day you signed. And it's the one that decides how much money you'll get back the day you leave. Australian couple in their 70s, that clause is the difference between leaving something behind for their kids and discovering that a third of their life savings has vanished without selling anything, without spending anything, without even moving. Today, you're going to see how a $700,000 entry payment turns into $525,000 on the way out, and why the real figure, once you add everything else, is usually a lot worse. I spent weeks reading real contracts, the Property Council census, the ABC's investigations, and the laws of all 6 states to bring you this. Because for most Australian retirees, the home is somewhere between 60 and 80% of everything they own. This is the decision that can protect it or quietly make it disappear. Everyone believes that moving into a retirement village means buying one last home. Smaller, simpler, no worries. But you never buy that home. You hand the company that built it an interest-free loan, and the bill for leaving can take the price of a new car for every year you live there. Before we go on, an honest heads up. This is market analysis, not legal or financial advice. Before you sign anything, speak to an independent professional. Let's start with how big this actually is, because it isn't one unlucky case, it's the model. Today, on the sector's own figures, somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 Australians over 65 live in a retirement village, around 1 in 10. And every year, another 5,000 or 6,000 sign that same contract. The hook at the front door is real. According to the Property Council census, a 2-bedroom unit costs on average about $424,000. Almost a third less than the median house in the same postcode. It sounds like a bargain, but that discount isn't a gift. It's a down payment on the bill that lands at the end. And here's the part almost nobody understands the day they sign. When you pay that $424,000 or that $700,000, you're not buying the unit. The ATO spells it out plainly. Your money goes in as an interest-free loan to the operator, in exchange for a license to occupy the home. You don't hold the title. You're not the owner. You're the lender. Read that again. You lend the company your money, interest-free. And on top of that, you pay for the privilege of having lent it to them. Anywhere else in the financial world, the one who lends gets paid. Here, the one who lends pays. That charge, how much they take and how they work it out, has a name the brochure rarely says out loud. And once you see how it builds, you'll understand why every year that passes works against you. It's called the deferred management fee, and almost all the power in that clause sits in one word: deferred. Deferred means you don't pay it today. It doesn't come out of your account the day you sign. It never shows up on a monthly statement. It sits there, quietly growing, until the exact day you leave, when you're no longer around to argue about it. That's why a resident can live 5 happy years without ever feeling what their contract really costs. So, how is it worked out? The formula is almost always the same: a percentage per year multiplied by the years you live there, up to a maximum cap. And the real numbers are surprisingly consistent. According to the Property Council census, the most common cap is 36%, and it's usually reached within the first 6 years. The big operators confirm the pattern. Ryman sets it at 30% of the entry price. Keaton builds up at around 6.5% a year for 5 years to 32.5%. And Retire Australia hits 35% in about 3 years. This is where the brochure reassures you. Look, there's a cap. It stops growing. And that's true. But think about what that cap really means. It means that by year 6, you've already lost the maximum. All of it. Every year you live there after that, you still get back not a single dollar of that fee. The cap doesn't protect you. It protects the operator's story. And before we get to dollars, there's one question that decides how much it hurts. Is the percentage worked out on what you paid to get in, or on the price the unit is resold for? If it's on the entry price, at least you know the number the day you sign. You multiply, and there it is. But if it's on the resale price, and the operator keeps most of the rise in value on top, then you lose twice. A percentage of a bigger number, and the gain you thought was yours. Independent advisors agree. That, therefore, is the worst model for the resident. Let's put it in dollars, with a clean example. You pay $500,000 to get in. Your contract reaches a cap of 35% by year 6. 35% of $500,000 is $175,000. That's the fee. The day you leave, the operator keeps that $175,000, and you or your family get back $325,000. And notice something. In the opening, you saw someone pay $700,000 and lose that same $175,000 with a cap of just 25%. Here, someone pays $500,000 and loses exactly the same because their cap is 35%. It's not just how much you pay, it's what percentage you signed. But that $325,000 coming back is before you touch anything else, before the unit's refurbishment, before the selling costs, before the legal fees. Because the deferred management fee isn't the last deduction in your contract, it's only the first. The deferred management fee is the big deduction, the one that makes the headlines. But it isn't the only one. Underneath it sits a stack of smaller charges that almost nobody adds up before signing. And together, they can cost as much as a whole car. Let's start with the slipperiest, reinstatement, the exit refurbishment. Your contract almost always says the same thing. When you leave, you must hand the unit back in the same condition as when you entered. Fair wear and tear accepted. Sounds fair. But those 4 words, fair wear and tear, are one of the biggest sources of dispute in the entire sector, because nobody agrees on where fair wear and tear ends and the refurbishment you pay for begins. In practice, doing up a 2-bedroom unit costs about $15,000 on average. On the sector's figures, paint, carpet, small repairs. But the ABC's 2024 investigations documented bills of $20,000, $50,000, and even more than $100,000 when the operator demands the home come back as new for resale. Think about what that really means. An 2-year-old woman or her family, after her death, gets a bill to repaint and recarpet a home she never actually owned, to get it ready for the operator's next customer. And the refurbishment is only the second step. On top goes the cost of selling, agent's commission, advertising, admin fees, legal costs to prepare the next resident's contract. In other words, you pay the selling costs on a property that was never yours. But the quietest clause, and often the most expensive, is another one, the capital gain share. The question is simple. If your unit rises in value while you live in it, is that gain yours? In many contracts, the answer is no. There are villages where the rise is split 50-50 with the operator. But there are others, and independent advisors have been calling them out for years, where 100% of the gain goes to the company. Every dollar your unit goes up. Imagine you pay $500,000 to get in, and 6 years later, that same unit is resold for $650,000. That $150,000 rise isn't yours. It's the operator's. You carried the cost of living there. They keep the reward of the property going up. So, to be fair, the law is starting to fix the worst of it. In Victoria, for example, a contract can no longer load you with a bigger share of the loss than of the gain. But those protections are new, uneven between states, and they don't reach the older contracts. Now, all of this, the deferred management fee, the refurbishment, the commissions, the loss gain, assumes one thing, that your unit sells quickly. But what if it doesn't? That's where, in the waiting, the part of the contract that really traps you begins. And it's the one almost nobody sees coming. The day you sign, they explain the deferred management fee. They might even explain the exit refurbishment. But there's one question almost nobody asks, and it's the one that hurts the most. When I leave, when do I get my money back? The answer isn't the day you leave. It's the day someone else buys your unit. And those 2 dates can be years apart. Because in a retirement village, your money isn't released when you go. It stays trapped inside the village until the operator finds a new resident to sign for your unit. Until then, that $325,000 that was owed to you isn't yours to use. You can't withdraw it. You can't touch it. It's frozen. And here's the uncomfortable detail. The one who controls that sale isn't you. It's the operator. The same one who keeps the deferred management fee, the capital gain, and the commissions is the one who decides the price and the pace your unit is resold at. Before the recent reforms, this produced stories that are hard to believe. The ABC's investigation documented the case of a New South Wales resident who moved into residential aged care. Her family waited 3.5 years for the unit to sell, 3.5 years without receiving the money. And the whole time, the bills kept coming. Service fees, maintenance, month after month, for an empty unit that nobody used, that the family couldn't even sell. Read this slowly, because this is what the contract really means. You can have moved out, you can have passed away, and your family is still paying the village for a home that was never yours, that they can't sell, and that they can't get your money out of. Now, the good news, and it's important to say it, the law has changed. And fast. Between 2024 and 2026, almost every state has put a limit in place. In New South Wales, if your unit hasn't sold within 6 months in the metro area, 12 elsewhere, you can apply, and the operator can be ordered to pay you within 30 days. In Victoria, from May 2026, the maximum is 12 months. Sold or not. Western Australia, South Australia, and Queensland are all moving towards that same 12-month limit. But there's some fine print. These protections are new, they're uneven. Tasmania, for instance, has no clear deadline, and many of them only apply to contracts signed after the reform. If you signed before, the old wait might still be yours. So the law now limits how long you have to wait. But limiting the wait doesn't fix the cruelest part of all. Because the problem was never just how long you wait. It's when. The exact moment that money freezes is usually the worst possible moment in a family's life. After everything you've just seen, I'll forgive you for thinking this has to be illegal. It isn't. And before we get to that worst moment we were talking about, the human cost, we have to answer, honestly, the question you might already be asking. If the model is this expensive, how can it be legal? Because the answer is more uncomfortable than the fees themselves. It's legal because each state's laws expressly allow it. The Retirement Villages Act in Western Australia, for example, treats exit fees as a legitimate part of the business model, as long as they're in the contract. As long as it's disclosed, charging a deferred management fee is perfectly legal. But legal doesn't explain why it exists. And here it's worth genuinely listening to the other side. Because their argument has its logic. A village's monthly fees are regulated. The operator generally can only recover costs with them, not make a profit. So where does their return for building and running all this come from? From the deferred management fee. The exit fee is, essentially, the operator's profit. Only instead of charging it at the front door, they charge it at the back. And what do you get in return? According to the sector, 3 things. You pay less to get in. The unit can cost around 55% of the price of an equivalent house in the area. You free up money from the sale of your family home to live your retirement better. And those fees fund the pools, the community centers, the maintenance, and the refurbishment of the homes. And I'll be fair with you, for some people, that trade makes sense. If you value the lifestyle and the community over leaving the biggest possible inheritance, paying less today and a big bill the day you're no longer here can be a perfectly reasonable decision. The model isn't a scam, it's a product. The problem isn't that the deferred management fee exists. The problem is what surrounds it. Because these contracts aren't regulated nationally, they're a patchwork. Each state, its own law, its own deadlines, its own rules. There's no national residence advocate, and the ACCC doesn't step into individual disputes. And here's the reframe that changes everything. A retirement village contract behaves like a complex financial product. A loan, deadlines, capital gain sharing, commissions. But it isn't regulated like one. It doesn't have the guarantees or the mandatory transparency your super fund or a managed investment would. You sign something as complex as a financial product, with the protection of a rental. So what happens when a system like that is left to run? In 2017, the Four Corners investigation showed us contracts from one of the country's biggest operators, Aveo, with exit fees of up to 35 or 40%, internal targets to turn over residents, between 10 and 12% a year, because every departure generated a new fee. Families trapped, waiting years for their money. There was a class action. It took nearly 6 years. In 2023, Aveo paid $11 million to settle it, without admitting any wrongdoing. That investigation pushed through the reforms you've already seen. The payment deadlines, the better disclosure, Victoria's new rules. But it didn't remove the model. The deferred management fee is still dominant, and there's still no national regulator. So the system is legal. The trade, for some, is even fair. But none of that changes who pays the price, or the exact moment it lands. And that moment, the one I've been promising you for a while now, is the hardest part of this whole story. I've been promising you this moment the whole video, the worst moment. And it's time to look at it head on, because here lies the difference between a bad deal and a real trap. A bad deal costs you money. A trap costs you money exactly when you can least afford it. Think about how life in a retirement village almost always ends. You don't stay there forever. A day comes, a stroke, a fall, a memory that starts to slip, when you can no longer live on your own. You need care. You need an aged care home. And to get into a good aged care home in Australia, you need a large sum, up front, the refundable accommodation deposit, the RAD. It can be $200,000, $350,000, sometimes $550,000. And where does that money come from? For most retirees, from the only big reserve they have, their home, the village one. But you already know what happens with that home. It's not yours to sell. It's frozen, waiting for someone to buy it. And when it finally comes through, it'll arrive a third lighter because of the deferred management fee. So just when you need the money faster and more complete than at any point in your life, it's trapped and shrunk. The Actuaries Institute of Australia put it into numbers. While you wait for your money, somebody still has to pay for the aged care. For a resident of moderate means who hasn't yet received their exit entitlement, that extra cost is about $95 a day. A 6-month wait adds more than $17,000 to the bill. $17,000 extra for the privilege of waiting for your own money. Some states have already seen how cruel this was. In Victoria, the village can now advance up to 85% of your exit entitlement directly to the aged care home and recover it later when the unit sells. It's a good reform, and it exists precisely because, for years, this broke too many families. But there's a second victim in this story, and they're rarely in the room the day it's signed. Your kids. Because only what's left after the fees, the deferred management fee, the legals, the refurbishment, goes into your estate. Choice says it plainly. These contracts can do as much damage to your children's future as to your own. On an average contract, a $500,000 entry leaves the beneficiaries somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000 short of what you paid. The home you wanted to leave them quietly became the operator's revenue. And beneath the numbers, there's something the seniors groups, National Seniors, CODA, Choice, have been documenting for years. The part that never shows up in any table. Adult children scrambling to pull together funds for their mother's aged care. Siblings arguing over money they thought would be there. And a parent with a feeling that repeats across almost every account. The feeling of having signed something they never fully understood. Trapped. And here's what really matters about everything you've seen today. Almost none of it was unavoidable. It doesn't take luck to avoid it. It takes knowing what to look for before you sign. Because there's a handful of clauses and a handful of questions that completely change how this story ends. The difference between losing $175,000 and signing with your eyes open isn't luck. It's 4 moves you can make before you sign anything. The first and the most powerful. Demand the number in dollars, not the percentage. The operator will tell you 35% and it'll sound abstract. You ask for something else. Show me, in writing, how many dollars I keep if I leave at 5 years, at 7, and at 10. When a percentage turns into a real figure, everything changes, and you have the right to ask for it. In Queensland and Victoria, the operator must give you a disclosure document with those numbers 21 days before you sign. The second, look for 2 clauses, just 2, to start. The capital gain clause. Do you keep any of the rise in value? Yes or no? And the payment deadline. If your unit doesn't sell, how long can the operator take to give you your money back? Those two lines decide whether you keep the reward and how long your family waits. The third isn't negotiable. Never sign without an independent lawyer who does villages regularly, not the operators, yours. Even the ACCC recommends it, and you have a safety net. A cooling off period, 7 days, 14 in Queensland, to pull out after signing, use it. And the fourth, the one almost nobody inside a village will tell you, this isn't your only option. A land lease community, where you own the home and lease the land, usually has no deferred management fee. Moving into an ordinary strata unit leaves you with 100% of your money. And staying in your own home, with modifications and home care support, keeps your capital intact. I'm not telling you a village is a bad thing. I'm telling you it's one product among several. And the right question is, how much of my capital am I willing to risk in exchange for convenience? A retirement village can be an excellent decision. For plenty of people, it is. But only when you go in with the real figure in front of you, the contract read by someone on your side, and your eyes fully open. The calm you sign with today is what protects your family tomorrow. And here's what almost nobody sees in time. Your home is only half the decision. Because selling, moving, or staying doesn't just affect your wealth. It affects your age pension, your super. What Centerlink counts every fortnight. Getting the property right and the pension wrong can undo everything you've just learned. That other half, we break down, figure by figure, on our channel Aussie Senior Finance. The link's right here. It's the next step in this very same decision.